I'm still on the Feast of the Trumpets. I believe this is part 5. Open your Bibles to the Old Testament, the book of Numbers, chapter 10. An HOF wrote me an email summing up the last teaching that I did, which was the Feast of the Trumpets part 4. I think I'll begin with that. Last night you cleared up listeners' questions about why the bride circles the groom. While there are several explanations available, the quick and easy answer is the bride circles the groom because she is proclaiming to all around that the groom is the center of her world. Jesus is the center of our world. His goals are our goals. We live for Him. Then you moved on in the teaching and explained the following. Part of the Rosh Hashanah event is Zichronot. Zichronot, which means Book of Remembrance. Upon the opening of this book, the Natzal, the N-A-T-Z-A-L, occurs. While Natzal is a Hebrew word used by the rabbis, ancient and contemporary, it is not in the Bible but corresponds to the Greek word harpazo, or harpizo, which means H-A-R-P-I-Z-O, by the way, which means a catching away or rapture. So Natsal equals rapture equals harpizo. The rabbis coined the word from Zephaniah chapter 2, verse 1 through 3, which by wording demonstrates a gathering of believers who have been changed and being hidden in the day of the Lord's anger, when His wrath is poured out. And of interest is the name Zephaniah means the Lord hides. And that was a pretty good summary of what was taught last Thursday evening. But now, let's get to Numbers chapter 10 as we move forward in this teaching. Let's read it. Let's start with verse 2. We'll read verses 2 through verse 4. Make thee 2 trumpets of silver. Of a whole piece shalt thou make them, that thou mayest use them for the calling of the assembly, and for the journeying of the camps. And when they shall blow with them, all the assembly shall assemble themselves to thee at the door of the tabernacle of the congregation. And if they blow but with one trumpet, then the princes which are heads of the thousands of Israel shall gather themselves unto thee. We see here in Numbers chapter 10, God commanding Moses to create 2 silver trumpets. Now these silver trumpets, throughout Israel's history, were blown for different reasons. But only one trumpet would be blown to call the nobles to the temple. Let's read again. In verse 4, and if they blow but with one trumpet, then the princes, the nobles, which are heads of the thousands of Israel, shall gather themselves unto thee. Now, in one of the temple rituals, 3, not 1 but 3 priests ascended to the trumpeting stone where they would stand. This trumpeting stone was on one of the corners of the temple, and they would blow 2 silver trumpets and 1 shofar. They have a picture of it. That's what it would look like. Except it would be, you can't really see the trumpeting stone there, but it looks like there is a trumpeting stone that they would stand on. You have 3 priests, 2 with the silver trumpets, 1 on the left, 1 on the right, and 1 with the shofar. And I'll leave it up there until I tell you to take it down. So you have 2 trumpets and 1 shofar. Now, the configuration you see there on the screen, this was always in this type of configuration, and it was done to signal either the beginning of a Sabbath or festivals that would periodically take place throughout the year. First, priest on the left would blow a silver trumpet. Then, the priest on the right would blow the second silver trumpet. And then, finally, the priest in the middle would blow and would sound the shofar. So the priest on the left would blow his trumpet, then followed by the priest on the right blowing his trumpet, and then the shofar would blow his instrument. However, on Rosh Hashanah, the order of things would change up. Now, I don't have a picture to show it to you, but now imagine along with me 2 shofars, 1 to the left and 1 to the right, and a silver trumpet in the middle. So just the opposite what you're seeing now. What you're seeing now is blown on the beginning of a Sabbath or the festivals that would take place during the year. But on Rosh Hashanah, the order would change. The priest on the left would sound the shofar. Then the priest on the right would sound another shofar. And then finally, the priest in the middle would blow the silver trumpet. Now, we just read twice that if 1 silver trumpet is blown, which would mean that would be on Rosh Hashanah, it is a signal for the nobles. Put it back up there. It's for signal for the nobles to ascend. Now you come back to me. I think you can imagine it with me. You saw what it would look like for the Sabbath and for the festivals. And then I asked you to imagine along with me what it would look like with 2 shofars, 1 on the left, 1 on the right, and then a silver trumpet. And this was blown. Silver trumpet in the middle. And this was blown at the beginning of Rosh Hashanah. The calling up of nobles. Go to 1 Peter, New Testament, chapter 2. Verse 9. Where do we see something like that in the New Testament? Not necessarily the blowing of trumpets or shofars, but that carries the same meaning for us, not only in Peter's day, but today, not only for Peter in his day, but for us also in our day. 1 Peter 2:9. But ye are chosen generation, a royal priesthood. Everyone that is saved by the blood of Jesus Christ and now trusting in Christ only, are part of that group. You're a prince. You're a noble. And holy nation, peculiar people. We're definitely peculiar. That ye should show forth the praises of him who had called you out of darkness into the marvelous light. Go to Revelation. Chapter 1. Verse 6. And hath made us kings and priests unto God and his Father. To him be glory and dominion forever and ever. Forever and ever. What does that tell me? How can I connect that with the Feast of the Trumpets of the future? See, everybody believes there's just going to be one horn blowing, whether it's a trumpet or a shofar, for the last trump. I don't think so. I don't believe so. Not if you understand how this was not only organized but commanded by God to take place. And when it got to the Rosh Hashanah, not always was alerting people to gather together for the assembly. The angels will do that in the rapture. I still get criticized that I don't believe there's a rapture. People that only listened to the first message I ever preached on the rapture recently, without continuing listening to the rest of the messages, will come to that conclusion. It's a wrong conclusion, but they come to that conclusion. I know, because it's on YouTube. We get the YouTube messages. And also on the website. I encourage you to listen through the whole rapture part of the series, plus the Feast of the Trumpets, which will be part in the written format that connects it all. I believe there's a rapture. I believe the angels would gather the saints as they're lifted up to assemble with Christ in the air. I just don't believe in the timing and when they say it's going to happen. I thought I made that very clear. But we're the nobles, my friends. We're the royal priesthood. We're the peculiar people. We are kings and priests in God's eyes. We are his jewels. I've preached a message on that before. And when that two shofars and trumpet sounds, the shofars to bring in the gathering, and the trumpet to lift up the nobles. In that last Feast of the Trumpets, before his coming or during his coming, it's going to take place. I'm convinced throughout the Old Testament they put into practices of what was to come. They were painting a picture. If you connect the dots as biblical detectives of how this is all going to take place. God's a very organized God, if you haven't gathered that in your journey with Him. He likes order. And there's going to be order in the things that happen in these last days. We are a chosen generation. We're going to be lifted up. Now, who blows that final trumpet could be up for argument. Is it angels or man? And people have argued that for centuries. Whatever your viewpoint on that is, I'm not going to get into it tonight. I have my opinion based on God's Word. But I just want to focus on what's going to happen. We have been seeing this played out for thousands of years. And I used to say this a lot. Not so much recently, but a lot. I look for the verifiables in God's Word. If something verifies itself over and over and over, the evidence keeps pointing to this, the theory that I might have, and if there's enough evidence of it, you become convinced. It's no longer a theory, and this is what to take place. That's why I am tempted to do a complete teaching on the tabernacle. And everything that's included with it. Because it's also prophetic. And most don't even observe it that way. There's very little in God's Word that doesn't point to the final episode of what's going to take place. The final event. That's why I get amused when you read or somebody says, well, Scripture is about 33% prophetic. Really? It's a lot more than that. Not only leading up to the first coming, but also the second coming. In fact, I think there's much more regarding the second coming than the first coming. Why? I don't think it's by accident, because this is your last chance before His return. God has put so many different mechanisms in play so you do not miss it. That's what Isaiah 53 is all about. We just read it in the King James Version, whatever version you read it, whatever language you use. But to get the full riches out of that chapter in Isaiah, the latter part of 52 and 53, you have to come at it 3 different ways. When you study that chapter. And I'll get into that when I get there. And once you understand, it's almost like what I did in Psalm 23, but not quite. When you peel it all apart, you have to wonder how blinded a person would have to be to miss His first coming. And like I said, when I get to that chapter, you understand why I'm saying this. Because I believe you too will be amazed of how they didn't see it. Well, now times that by at least 10 of what we have in the Scriptures. And the denial is greater now than it was back then because there's so much more people now. You can't even make that comparison of how many more people should know. But they don't. But they don't. And that's why this ministry exists. We are chosen. We are noble. We're part of a royal priesthood. That's going to be called and lifted to be gathered with the King of Kings when those final trumpets and shofars blow. It's not by accident that a shofar on the left and a shofar on the right and a trumpet is in the middle was understood in the Scriptures as a sign, as a signal for the nobles to ascend. If you can't tie that into the Feast of the Trumpets and the last Feast of the Trumpets, before or during his return, then you're just as guilty as all the others that missed this first coming. You realize how privileged we are if we're still alive to be part of that? Amazing, spectacular event that's going to be taking place in the very near future. And what I try to do almost always is not only get you excited for that, but to get others excited. And they're not going to be excited for anything going to most of these churches that couldn't see this sign in God's Word if you slap them across the face with it. That means our work is cut out for us. Every single one of you, in a sense, has been called to be a messenger in your own way. And we have a lot of work to do before his return. The time is getting short, just as this hour did. Now, I'll preach one more message, God willing, only one more message, so I can move on to other things. Come back to this in the future. But I wanted you to get a feel, I guess, and an understanding how rich this Feast of the Trumpet is. Part of the calendar. Not only now, but in the future. If you get it, I want to hear from you. Play a song.